Dear listeners, thank you for your incredible support in helping us reach 1,000 subscribers. We're now aiming for 2,000, so please support us by subscribing and helping us reach this milestone. Now let's start the story. The invitation to the annual Spencer family reunion rested on my desk, its gold-embossed lettering glinting in the morning light streaming through my penthouse windows. 15 years of meticulously maintained deception were about to unravel, and the irony was it wasn't even by my choice. I picked up my phone and reread the email that had set everything in motion. Forbes 30 under 40. The new face of digital art. Sabrina Spencer's NFT empire reaches $3.8 billion valuation. The article would be published tomorrow, just 2 days before the family reunion. My carefully constructed facade was on the verge of collapse, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. Miss Spencer, my assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. Your brother Martin is on line 1. Again. Of course he was. He'd been calling nonstop since the press release hit major publications. I drew a deep breath and picked up the phone. Hello, Martin. What the hell, Sabrina? He skipped past any formalities. I just got a call from Business Insider asking for a comment about my billionaire sister. Care to explain? I leaned back in my chair, eyes tracing the Manhattan skyline. Guess you'll have to wait for the article like everyone else. Cut the crap, he snapped. All these years you've let us think you were barely scraping by. Mom and Dad have been worried sick about you. I couldn't help but laugh. Worried? Is that what you call the constant lectures about getting a real job? The snide remarks about how I was wasting my potential? They were trying to help. No, Martin. They were trying to control me. Just like they tried to control you. And you let them. Silence hung heavy on the line. Martin had always been the obedient one, following our parents' meticulously crafted blueprint business school, MBA, joining our father's investment firm. The golden son who never strayed from the script. Just tell me one thing, he finally said. How long? How long have you been hiding this? I stood and walked to the window, watching a private helicopter land on a nearby building's helipad. My helicopter, actually one of 3 I owned. Remember when I moved into that tiny studio apartment in Brooklyn? When you first started that digital art nonsense? He paused, calculating. That was 15 years ago. Exactly. Everyone thought I was insane for ditching my finance degree to doodle on computers, as Dad called it. But what none of you knew was that I'd already sold my first NFT collection for $50,000. $50,000, back then? MHM. And 6 months later, I sold another collection for $200,000. By the time Dad was telling everyone at Christmas dinner that I was going through a phase, I'd already made my first $1 million. I could almost hear him doing the math in his head. But you still borrowed money from Mom and Dad for rent. You drove that beat-up Honda until last year. I never borrowed money from them, Martin. I asked them to invest in my company. They refused, loudly and repeatedly. And the Honda? That was a choice, not a necessity. Just like this penthouse was a choice. So was the private jet and everything else I kept hidden from all of you. Private jet? His voice cracked. Jesus, Sabrina. How? How rich are you exactly? I smiled, recalling all the family dinners where they treated me like the poor relation. The way our younger sister Lydia would ostentatiously pick up the check, making sure everyone noticed she was helping out her struggling artist sister. The Forbes article will say $3.8 billion, but that's a conservative estimate. The real number is closer to 5. The sound Martin made was somewhere between a gasp and a choke. Now, if you'll excuse me, I continued smoothly, I have a board meeting to attend. Oh, and Martin, I'll see you at the family reunion. I'm thinking of making quite an entrance. I hung up before he could respond and pressed the intercom. Samantha, is everything set for the reunion? Yes, Miss Spencer. The jet is fueled and ready. The car service is arranged for all family members to be picked up in Rolls-Royces. The venue has been updated to the private island as requested, and the NDAs have been prepared for all staff. Perfect. I picked up the reunion invitation again. For 15 years, I'd played the role they expected, the artistic black sheep who couldn't handle the real world. The daughter who needed constant reminders about financial responsibility. The sister who was pitted and patronized at every family gathering. But not this time. My phone buzzed with a text from Lydia. OMG, Saf, please tell me this Forbes thing is a joke. What's going on? I left it unanswered. Lydia, who never missed an opportunity to flaunt her 6-figure salary at every family gathering. Lydia, who loved reminiscing about how she'd made it while her big sister was still finding herself. The intercom buzzed again. Miss Spencer, your parents are both on the line. Tell them I'm in a meeting. I checked my watch. And Samantha, call the helipad. I think I'll take the chopper to the board meeting today. As I gathered my things, my mind drifted back to the day that changed everything, the day I decided to hide my success from my family, 15 years earlier. Digital art isn't real art, Sabrina. My father's voice boomed across the dinner table. And this NFT nonsense? It's a fad, a scam. No one's going to pay real money for pictures on a computer. I sat there, 22 years old, fresh out of college, trying to explain my vision to my family. The same family that had paid for an Ivy League finance degree they expected me to put to use at my father's firm. Actually, Dad, I just sold my first collection for. Enough, he cut me off. I don't want to hear about your little hobby. Either you come work for the firm like we planned, or you're on your own. No more support. No more safety net. My mother reached across the table, patting my hand with a condescending smile. Sweetie, we just want what's best for you. You need stability. A real career. I looked around the table at their faces, my father's disappointment, my mother's worried frown, Martin's smugness, Lydia's barely concealed disdain. That was the moment I made my decision. I wouldn't tell them about the $50,000 sale, the 3 galleries eager to represent me, or the tech companies reaching out to discuss collaborations. You're right, I said, standing up. I need to figure this out on my own. 2 weeks later, I moved into the smallest, cheapest studio apartment I could find in Brooklyn. My family assumed I was struggling, living off my savings, too proud to admit defeat. In reality, I was building an empire. The first year was brutal. I worked 18-hour days perfecting my artistic style, mastering blockchain technology, and forging connections within the crypto art world. My first major collection, Digital Dreams in Binary, sold out within hours, bringing in $1.2 million. I reinvested that money back into the business, hiring developers, creating new platforms for artists, and innovating in ways the traditional art world couldn't even imagine. But every time I visited home, I played the part, drove my old Honda, wore simple clothes, maintained the illusion of a struggling artist. At least let me help with your rent, my mother would offer, while my father shook his head in disappointment. No thanks, Mom. I'm doing fine. And I was more than fine. By the end of that first year, my net worth had climbed to $10 million. By year 3, it had surpassed $100 million. But to my family, I remained just Sabrina the dreamer who couldn't face reality. Now, 15 years later, as I stepped into my private helicopter, I reflected on how that small deception had spiraled into a monumental secret. What began as a protective facade had grown into a vast empire. And in 2 days, everything would change. My phone buzzed a message from my father. We need to talk. Now. I smiled and turned off the phone. They'd have to wait for the reunion. After 15 years of listening to them criticize my so-called failures, they were about to learn of my success. And I intended to make sure it was a revelation they would never forget. The Forbes article dropped at exactly 6 a.m. Eastern Time. I was already awake, sipping coffee in my home office, watching the chaos unfold across my multiple screens. Digital art revolutionary. How Sabrina Spencer built a multi-billion-dollar empire in secret. The headline was paired with a photo I'd carefully selected for this moment, me standing proudly before my most successful NFT collection, dressed in clothes worth more than Lydia's monthly salary. The article didn't just reveal my wealth. It chronicled every achievement I'd kept hidden for 15 years. My phone erupted with notifications. First came the family group chat. Lydia, is this for real? $3.8 billion? Martin, I tried to warn you all yesterday. Mom, Sabrina, please answer your phone. Dad, this must be some kind of mistake. Aunt Pamela, just saw the article. Is our Sabrina the Sabrina Spencer? I muted the chat and turned to my inbox, hundreds of interview requests from major news outlets, investment proposals, speaking invitations. But one email stood out. From Arthur Chun, my father's business partner. Sabrina, I believe we need to discuss potential synergies between Spencer Investments and your digital art platforms. Your father may have mentioned some concerns, but I assure you we can be quite flexible. I couldn't help but laugh. Just 3 years ago, I had approached the firm about a partnership. Arthur himself had shown me the door, dismissively stating they didn't deal in internet pictures. My intercom buzzed. Miss Spencer, your mother is in the lobby. She's quite insistent. I checked the security feed. There was my mother, Amelia Spencer, still impeccably polished in her designer suit, but with an unfamiliar desperation in her eyes as she argued with the security guard. Let her up, I sighed. It was time to face at least one member of my family. The private elevator opened directly into my penthouse. My mother stepped out and froze, her gaze sweeping over the vast open space, the floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of Central Park, and the original Basquiat hanging on the wall likely worth more than their house. Sabrina, she breathed, her voice unsteady. What is all this? This is my home, Mom. The real one, not the small apartment I keep for family visits. She walked to the window, her heels clicking against the marble floor. How long have you? How did you? 15 years, I replied, pouring her a cup of coffee. Since the day Dad said my digital art would never amount to anything. Her expression shifted, torn between confusion and hurt. But you struggled. We saw at the tiny apartment, the old car, borrowing money for rent. I never borrowed money, I corrected her. I asked you and Dad to invest in my company. There's a difference. And everything else, the apartment, the car, that was all just theater. Theater? Her voice rose, disbelief mingling with anger. You've been lying to us for 15 years? No, Mom. I just let you see what you wanted to see. You were all so convinced I was failing that you never bothered to look closer. She sank into one of my Italian leather chairs, her shoulders slumping as if the weight of realization had finally settled. Does anyone else know? In the family? No one. Well, Martin found out yesterday when the press release went out. I suppose he tried to warn you. She nodded weakly. He called, but your father was sure it was a mistake. Some other Sabrina Spencer. I walked to my desk and pulled out a file. Here's something you might find interesting. The investment opportunity one tried to present to Dad 3 years ago. If he had invested the $1 million I asked for, his share would be worth approximately $100 million today. Her hands trembled as she took the file. He said you wanted a handout. That you were too proud to admit your art wasn't working out. And you believed him. Just like you believed him about my so-called struggling artist's life. Tell me, Mom, in 15 years, did any of you ever actually attend one of my shows? Check out my work? Even just Google my name? She couldn't meet my eyes. That's what I thought. I turned away, gazing down at the city I now partially owned. The annual family reunion is in 2 days. I've made some changes to the arrangements. Changes? I bought out the entire resort where it was supposed to be held. It's no longer public. Instead, everyone will be picked up by my private cars and taken to my jet. We'll be having the reunion on my island. Your island? In the Caribbean. I bought it last year after closing my first billion-dollar deal. I turned to face her, eyes steady. And Mom, this time I won't be the one sitting quietly while everyone else parades their achievements. This time, I have something to say. She stood up, smoothing her skirt with trembling hands. Your father, when he sees all of this, he'll finally have to admit that his little girl playing with computer pictures built something bigger than his entire family legacy. I smiled. And that's just the beginning. I escorted her to the elevator, but just before the doors slid shut, I added, oh, and Mom? That Bentley you've been dreaming about, but Dad insists is too expensive? I bought 3 last month. Just because I could. The elevator doors closed on her stunned expression. As soon as she was gone, I called my assistant. Samantha, is everything ready for the reunion? Yes, Miss Spencer. The island staff is fully prepared. The documentation packages have been assembled for each family member, detailing exactly when they dismissed your investment proposals and how much those shares would be worth today. The video presentation of your success timeline is also ready. Perfect. I picked up my phone and finally responded to the family group chat with a single message. Looking forward to seeing everyone at the reunion. Dress appropriately for a private island. Transportation will be provided. Then, I opened my laptop to check the market. The Forbes article had sent my company's stock soaring, another billion added to my net worth before breakfast. I thought about my father, likely sitting in his office, trying to process how his supposedly unsuccessful daughter had quietly become one of the wealthiest individuals in the country. About Lydia, who loved to flaunt her 6-figure salary and Hampton's vacation home, unaware I could buy her entire life with a day's worth of interest. The reunion was going to be memorable. My phone buzzed with another message from my father. We need to meet before the reunion. Family matters should be discussed privately. I typed back, everything will be discussed at the reunion, Dad. After all, isn't that what family reunions are for? Sharing our successes. Then I called Samantha again. Contact the design team. I want the island's helipad repainted before the reunion. Make sure my name is visible from the air when they land. Already done, Miss Spencer. Anything else? I considered 15 years of condescension, pity, and being branded the family's failure. Yes. Make sure the Forbes article is framed and hanging in every room of the island resort. I want it to be the first thing they see, no matter where they turn. As I hung up, I caught my reflection in the glass, successful, powerful, and finally ready to reveal to my family exactly who I'd become while they were busy doubting me. The countdown to the reunion had begun. The morning of the Spencer family reunion arrived clear and bright. I stood on the tarmac of my private airfield, watching as 3 Rolls-Royces approached in flawless formation. My family had arrived. The cars rolled to a halt, and the doors swung open. First came my father, his once commanding presence somehow diminished. My mother followed, still visibly shaken from our encounter 2 days prior. Martin, Lydia, and a collection of aunts, uncles, and cousins trailed behind, their expressions ranging from stunned disbelief to thinly veiled resentment. And there, front and center, awaited my gleaming private jet, its polished surface reflecting the sunlight. Across its side, in elegant lettering, read, Spencer Digital Empire. Welcome, everyone, I called out, my voice cutting crisply across the tarmac. I trust the ride was comfortable. Sabrina. My father stepped forward, striving to regain his usual authoritative tone. This is unnecessary. We could have had a perfectly good reunion at the resort. I smiled. The resort was too public, Dad. Besides, I thought it was time for some real family bonding on my island. Your island? Lydia muttered, clutching her designer handbag like a lifeline. Of course, you have an island. The flight was nothing short of fascinating. My family settled uneasily into the luxurious cabin, their eyes darting around, unable to hide their astonishment. Everything from the solid gold fixtures to the rare art pieces adorning the walls spoke of unimaginable wealth. Immaculately trained staff served vintage champagne with precision and grace. Is that a real Picasso? Aunt Pamela whispered, her gaze locked on the painting mounted beside her. Yes, I replied casually. I bought it last year, along with a few others. My father cleared his throat. Sabrina, perhaps we should discuss. We'll discuss everything when we land, Dad. For now, enjoy the flight. The champagne you're sipping, by the way, it cost more than your company's quarterly profits. He flinched. Good. 2 hours later, as we began our descent, my private island emerged into view. 300 acres of tropical paradise, with a state-of-the-art resort complex nestled at its heart. And there, exactly as I'd arranged, my name was displayed in letters large enough to be seen from miles away. Sabrina Spencer. As we landed, I heard Lydia gasp. The helipad was surrounded by expansive digital displays showcasing my most successful NFT collections, each with its sale price prominently displayed millions upon millions of dollars worth of digital art projected onto towering screens. Welcome to Spencer Island, I announced as we disembarked. My own little piece of paradise. Little? Martin choked out, staring at the breathtaking expanse. The resort complex spread before us, a masterful blend of modern architecture and untouched natural beauty. Everyone's rooms have been assigned, I continued smoothly. You'll find some reading material waiting for you. I suggest you review it before dinner. The reading material was painstakingly customized for each of them. For my father, a detailed breakdown of every investment opportunity he had dismissed, accompanied by their current valuations. For Lydia, a neat comparison of her cherished six-figure salary against the interest I earned each day. For Martin, a thorough account of how his firm had forfeited millions by refusing collaboration with my company. I allowed them an hour to settle in and absorb the truth. Then, I summoned them all to the main dining room. The room itself was a masterpiece, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a crystalline ocean, sunlight pouring in over a massive table crafted from rare, polished wood. Each place setting likely worth more than most people's cars. And on every wall, elegantly framed for all to see, hung that Forbes article. My family trickled in slowly, their expressions dazed and shell-shocked. They had changed for dinner, but even their expensive outfits seemed oddly inadequate against the backdrop of such opulence. Please sit. I gestured to the table. We have a lot to discuss. Sabrina, my father began as soon as everyone was seated, his voice strained. I think I speak for everyone when I say we're surprised. Surprised? I laughed softly. That's an interesting choice of words. Not angry that I kept this from you. Not hurt that I concealed my success. Just surprised. We didn't know, my mother said quietly. No, you didn't want to know, I corrected her. Every time I tried to share my work with you, you changed the subject. Every time I presented an investment opportunity, you dismissed it. You were all so convinced I was failing that you couldn't recognize my success, even when it was right in front of you. But, the apartment, Lydia interjected. The old car. All those times you let me pay for dinner because I thought you couldn't afford it. Because you enjoyed it, Lydia, I finished for her. Playing the successful sister, making sure everyone saw how you were helping out poor, struggling Sabrina. She had the decency to look ashamed. Let me show you something, I said, pressing a button. Screens descended from the ceiling, displaying a carefully curated timeline of my accomplishments. Each milestone contrasted with their dismissive remarks over the years. 2008. Digital art isn't real art. Dad, my first collection sells for $50,000. 2010. When are you going to get a real job? Mom, company valuation hits $10 million. 2015. At least I can afford to help my sister out. Lydia, net worth surpasses $500 million. 2020. We don't invest in internet pictures. Dad's firm. Company valuation reaches $1 billion. Every doubt, every dismissal, every condescending comment, I said quietly. I remembered them all. And with each one, I built something bigger. But why? My father's voice cracked. Why hide it? Because you all needed to learn something. Success doesn't have just one face. Innovation doesn't follow a predetermined path. And sometimes, the child you wrote off as a failure turns out to be the one who exceeds all of your expectations. I stood and walked to the window, staring out at the endless ocean. Do you know what the hardest part was? I asked. Not the secrecy, not pretending to struggle. It was watching you all celebrate mediocrity while dismissing true innovation. Mediocrity? Martin snapped defensively. Yes, mediocrity. I turned to him. You followed Dad's safe path. You took the job he wanted you to take, made the safe investments. And I looked at Lydia. You bragged about your six-figure salary while I was making that much in minutes. That's enough. My father stood abruptly. You've made your point. We were wrong. Is that what you want to hear? No, Dad. What I want is for you to truly understand. I gestured around the room, to the wealth and beauty surrounding us. This isn't about money. It's about vision. A vision you couldn't grasp because you were too focused on clinging to the past. I pressed another button, and new images filled the screens. My latest project, a groundbreaking platform designed to revolutionize how digital art would be created, bought, and sold. This launches next month, I said calmly. Conservative estimates put its value at $10 billion. I'm showing you this because, for once, I want you to see what I'm building before it happens. No more dismissing it. No more doubting. The room fell into a heavy silence as they absorbed the magnitude of what I was saying. Finally, my mother broke the stillness. We're proud of you, Sabrina. We should have been proud all along. Thank you, Mom, I replied. But I didn't do this for your approval. I did it because it was my dream, my vision. And now I smiled, letting the truth settle over them. It's my empire. So what happens now? Martin asked, his voice tentative. Now, I echoed. Now, we have dinner as a family. But this time, it's on my terms. No more pretending. No more hiding. And tomorrow, we'll tour the island. I'll show you exactly what your daughter, sister, and niece has built while you weren't paying attention. I raised my glass. To the truth. Finally, they lifted their glasses, still looking a bit dazed. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of gourmet dishes, fine wine, and slowly thawing conversations. For the first time in 15 years, my family was beginning to truly see me. As they retired to their rooms that night, I remained in the dining room, gazing out at the moonlit ocean. My assistant, Samantha, appeared quietly at my side. Was it worth it? She asked. The big reveal. I thought about the looks on their faces, the shock, the understanding that had gradually replaced disbelief. Yes, I replied, but my voice was softer than expected. But not for the reasons I thought. It wasn't about proving them wrong anymore. It was about finally being free to be myself. I smiled. And tomorrow? Tomorrow, we show them the future. Their comfortable, predictable world of traditional investments and conventional success is over. It's time they understand that the daughter they dismissed as a dreamer wasn't just dreaming, she was building something extraordinary while they weren't looking. Later that night, I discovered a note slipped under my door, written in my father's unmistakable handwriting. I was wrong, not just about the business, but about everything. You didn't just succeed, you revolutionized an entire industry. I'm sorry I couldn't see it sooner. Dad. I placed the note in a frame right beside the receipt from my first NFT sale, $50,000. A reminder of where I started and how far I'd come. The next morning, as I watched my family gather for breakfast, their attitudes had shifted. They were looking at me not just as the daughter they had underestimated, but as someone who had created something remarkable. And I realized something important. Success isn't always about proving others wrong. Sometimes, it's about proving yourself right. And the sweetest victory isn't the grand reveal, it's the quiet knowledge that you built something extraordinary while everyone else was too busy doubting you. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Spencer Digital Empire announces revolutionary new platform. The future was calling. And this time, my family would be there to watch it unfold. No more hiding. No more pretending. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.